Back in 2017, we got our first look at Marvel's Avengers, and it looked great. Finally a good Avengers game. Unfortunately, what happened in the following years was nothing short of a disaster. There were many causes for the massive failure, but in my eyes, most of the blame can be pinned on the terrible monetization that shaped the game into the mess that we got. Marvel's Avengers is a live service looter with a heavy focus on combo-based combat. The game is split between a story mode, where you'll get a taste of each of the playable characters, and the endgame live service modes, where you'll complete missions, level up heroes, and collect new, more powerful gear. This setup isn't too far off from other live service games, but the execution is where Marvel's Avengers really falls flat. Contrary to popular belief, the campaign can actually be fairly enjoyable. Now, don't get me wrong, it's nothing life-changing, but if you're a fan of Marvel movies and spectacle, the story isn't terrible, and some of the action set pieces are really fun. Like when you're fighting a Thor on a helicarrier that's falling out of the sky, or fighting your way through a crumbling bridge, constantly swapping between heroes. The real problem with the campaign is that they shoehorned in the live service components to ease you into the endgame content. For example, one mission you'll be running through Tony Stark's mansion, assembling a suit all while fighting enemies. That'll then be followed up by a set of missions where you get put into a seemingly random map to then secure a random meaningless objective by standing on it or activating switches. These missions are just plain boring and are so far from the actual fun parts of the game, they really drag down the overall experience. These crappy missions end up being the majority of the live service content, and they just bloat the campaign and take away from the actual fun missions. It'd be like if in a Call of Duty campaign, after each story mission, you had to play 1 to 3 multiplayer matches to then unlock the next level. The only reason to have them included is to increase the length of the campaign and to introduce the live service aspects of the game. Once you finish the campaign, you'll have gotten a taste of the grind that's to come, via the filler missions and the loot system. But when you start the live service part of the game is where you'll find that almost every system in the game is designed to either be a grind to get you to keep playing, or watered down in service of trying to get you to buy additional cosmetics. Let's look at the 3 main examples of this: the missions, the combat, and the loot. In the endgame, you'll mostly be running the boring live service missions from the campaign over and over. These quickly become repetitive and are usually just the same lame objectives in different maps. It's really clear that these were quickly thrown together so that they could just force out as much content as possible, because it's way cheaper for them to pump out crappy missions with boring objectives instead of developing engaging and unique scenarios for you to play through. That wouldn't be as much of a problem if the combat was super engaging, but the combat has its own issues. During the campaign, you'll have played a bunch of different heroes and won't really get bored of it because of the variety in characters. But once you hit the live service missions and the combat's all you have, you'll find that the combat can be quite repetitive and ends up being another grind because of the skill trees. Now don't get me wrong, the combat can actually be great, but the issue with it is that you need to hit max level or close to it to unlock all the abilities and upgrades for your character's kit. That makes it complex and fun to play. It's however a massive grind to get your character to high levels, and is completely unreasonable if you want to have several high level characters. The grind here is clearly another way to pad out the game, and isn't fun. It just makes it so that people will have to keep grinding and takes away from the gameplay experience. You may be wondering why they need to make the skill trees such a grind if the loot usually fills the role of something to grind for in these types of games. Well, that's because the loot in Marvel's Avengers is absolutely awful. In a normal looter, like Diablo, Borderlands, or Destiny, you'd be excited to find new loot because it changes up the way you play, like how in Borderlands and Destiny, picking up a new gun can completely change up the way you play the game. Not in Marvel's Avengers. The loot in this game almost exclusively just increases a power number, with maybe a minor bonus. It has no real change on gameplay, and just increases an arbitrary number. On top of that, items have no impact on the way your character looks, meaning that the loot system's basically useless, and is included for the sake of having something to continuously grind for. It'd be like if in Borderlands, every gun was exactly the same, and every time you picked up a new one, it would just increase the damage. Not to mention, when you think Marvel and superheroes, you think cool suits and costumes, like all the Iron Man armors or Spider-Man suits. But in Marvel's Avengers, equipping a piece of armor on Iron Man doesn't actually change how he looks, in any way whatsoever. The loot system in Marvel's Avengers was added for the sake of adding something to grind for. It doesn't actually improve the game in any way, and is generally not fun to engage with. This loot system could have been good, but they watered it down and moved gameplay related changes to the skill trees to make them more bloated and grindy, and make it so that there's no cosmetic changes so that they could sell you skins. I'm willing to bet that at one point the loot system was going to change up gameplay and change your appearance, But the execs in charge didn't like that they wouldn't be able to monetize skins as easily and changed it to the watered down crap that we actually got. These core aspects of gameplay were very clearly built and shaped around the monetization. They make you grind so hard to unlock your character's kit so that you'll keep playing the game. They make a bunch of crappy missions to pump out as much content as quickly as they can, and gutted the loot system so that they could sell you skins. That now leads us right into the shop, where most of the skins and other cosmetics are sold separately. Most skins in the shop would be considered the best and most desirable in the game, like the skins from the MCU movies. And not only are they sold separately, but they're sold for the same prices that you'd expect from fully free-to-play games like Fortnite. You can, however, unlock some skins for free by completing missions and challenges, but most of these skins are simple recolors and don't compare to the quality of the shop skins. One of the most frustrating parts of the skins and animations being sold separately is that many of them were available for purchase at launch, meaning that they could have been part of the base game, but instead they shamelessly ripped them out so that they could be sold separately to people that just spent $60 on a brand new game. Even in games like COD, they wait at least a month before flooding their in-game shop with skins for sale. And yes, of course, there's battle passes in the game, one for each character. You get all the battle passes for free for the characters that launch with the game when you buy it, but again, have to grind hard to complete them by doing very specific missions that limit how much progress you can make. These passes also provide skins, most of which though are just recolors. Any new characters added to the game have their battle passes sold separately, and of course come with their own lineup of skins available in the shop. I however think that for the new characters, this is much more reasonable because of all the actual gameplay content that's being provided for free. There's also a bunch of other, more minor, but no less annoying tactics in the game, including the countless brand promotions that unlock exclusive skins like the 5Gum and Verizon skins. The fact that they said they wouldn't have any pay-to-win aspects in the game, then added pay-to-win aspects, and then took them out after huge community backlash, and the exclusive deals with Sony to make Spider-Man a PlayStation exclusive, alienating players on other systems, and essentially making the experience worse if you don't have a PlayStation. All this adds up to a full-price AAA game that was overloaded with monetization, that had its gameplay system shaped around getting players to spend money. So, how could we fix Marvel's Avengers monetization? Well, first off, the single-player campaign is so far from the live service part of the game, they could have been entirely separate experiences. If we took out the shitty live service missions and systems like the loot, and added a few more engaging and exciting missions, the single player could go from decent but not great to a solid campaign. And we know that they could have done it. All we have to do is look at the Guardians of the Galaxy game that was a fully single player experience without microtransactions or any grind, and it ended up being great. To fix the live service part of the game, it'll take a little more work. First, at the very least, this part of the game should have been free to play. I think that alone would have gone a long way to make people think that the game's monetization was a lot fairer. But more work needs to be done to make it a good game. First, even if we leave the boring repetitive missions unchanged, the skill tree grind needs to be toned way down to make it more fun to play the heroes faster. Moving some of the skills to gear would go a long way in making not only characters more interesting, but making the gear feel like it's worth collecting. Another approach would be to make the gear the central focus, and make it more in line with other games by adding unique abilities to the gear and actually having the gear change your character's appearance. That would make the game much more engaging and make the grind for gear feel worth it. With this approach, they would still be able to sell skins in the shop to use for transmog like in Diablo. It would just be toned down compared to what we have now. Any of these fixes would have made the game and its monetization much more fair, and that's all without touching the other minor aspects, like the exclusive content and countless annoying brand deals. Generally, what Marvel's Avengers needed to do is to pick a few methods of monetization and focus on building them into their game, instead of choosing to shape their entire game around adding as much monetization as possible. What do you think Marvel's Avengers should have done to fix their monetization? Let me know in the comments. At this point, Marvel's Avengers has been written off as a failure, and it's announced that it will be shutting down in September of 2023. To their credit, with this announcement, they've made all the cosmetic items in the game free, and unlocked for everyone. So if you wanted to give Marvel's Avengers a try, now's the best time to do it. What we and games companies can learn from Marvel's Avengers is that you can't have it all. Realistically, most games need some form of monetization to keep them running and to support the developers. But Marvel's Avengers wanted it all, and changed their game to accommodate all the monetization, Hopefully this failure helps companies realize that while monetization is necessary, you have to be very careful to not let it shape your game and to overdo it. Thanks for watching. I'm releasing at least one video like this every month, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one.